Wow, I am just flooded with gratitude. It's been an amazing service so far, so thank you for being with us. So if you were here 2 weeks ago, you may remember that I was leaving that day to get on a plane to go to Seattle, and I was helping my daughter move, and I was explaining the role that faith would play in my experience. You know, faith is that knowing that all is well, no matter what is happening. And when you have a consciousness of faith, that vibration of faith goes before you and kind of prepares the way for you. And I pointed out that there were many things that day that I could have been nervous about or encounter that might provoke some fear in me, but that I would face whatever I faced with the confidence of faith and that knowing in my heart beyond the reach of proof that would keep me in kind of a spiritual perspective. So I'll share that it worked. Everything went very smoothly as I traveled in both directions, and I even surprisingly got upgraded to first class on the long leg from Atlanta to Seattle. So it all just worked really, really wonderful. So thank you for knowing that with me, that I was going to have a good trip. So many years ago, when I started studying spiritual truth and principles, I declared myself to be a metaphysician, meaning that I was going to look at the meta-interpretation of the physical world of what was going on. I would strive to know and recognize the spiritual truth of any situation that I found myself in. I would strive to remember that God is at the center of everything, therefore love and peace and harmony and joy and all the things that are good in life are at the center of everything. And everything includes me and other human beings. So no matter what challenge I face, what obstacle might be in my path, or what quirky things kind of unfold in my world, I'm always called to look for the spiritual principles at play in any situation. I'm always on call, so to speak, as a metaphysician, or as a person that looks at things from faith. So I'm wondering, have you ever been in a situation when a doctor is needed right away? Now, speaking of flights, I was actually on a flight one time when a passenger fell ill on the plane, and the guy had kind of worked his way to the front of the plane, and he collapsed in first class. And the flight attendant got on her little microphone thing, and she said, you know, would any medical personnel please report to the front of the plane, we're having an emergency. And immediately, without hesitation, you could hear the unbuckling of seatbelts all around. And these people rushed to the flight attendant and then on to the sick passenger at the front of the plane. And there was no hesitation, none. They didn't know what was wrong with the person. They didn't know if it was in their field of expertise. They just knew they were trained for whatever might be needed. And they quickly formed a team, and they triaged the patient, and they tried to stabilize him until we could get the plane landed. They had faith in who they knew themselves to be. And they jumped into action. My former sister-in-law is actually a cardiac nurse, and she's always ready to bring her medical training forward to help too. You know, I know of at least one occasion when she was near an accident that had just occurred, and she stopped her car and got out and offered medical help at the scene of an accident. It's just kind of in her blood. And she's willing to lend her knowledge, no matter if you have a new diagnosis or something quirky going on with you. You know, she's willing to help you and give you advice. And she listens to every conversation with a nurse's ear. She seems to always be kind of on call in that mindset. So those trained medically, you know, just seem to be willing to answer that call from the knowledge that they possess. It isn't something they can just turn on and off. It's just the way they live their lives. It's who they know themselves to be. It's their identity. And there's never a moment when they stop and step outside that identity. They may be skiing in the Alps, they may be deep sea diving, they may be wherever they are. They carry with them this knowing of medical protocol that they can bring forward into action at any time. And I don't know about you, but as a person of faith, someone who's known to be a person of faith, I'm often called upon to bring forward my perspective on something going on, and I'll offer whatever comes to me. And sometimes I'm called forth into service of another who doesn't even know who I am, but I feel that inside of me. I seem to be drawn to those who need to borrow my faith and my knowledge. So sort of like a doctor or a nurse, I know who I know myself to be. is a metaphysical minister. That's who I know myself to be. It's my identity. And there's never a moment when I step outside of that identity. And sometimes my human experiences challenge that connection. But no matter where I am or what I'm doing, I carry that spiritual truth inside me, and I can jump into faith action whenever it's necessary. I want to tell you about 2 different times in my life where that has happened in a remarkable way. So one day, I was staying at the beach up near Panama City, actually, where Hurricane Sally just hit. And I was in a townhouse with several friends. And one of the things I like to do when I'm at the beach is get up really early in the morning and go out onto the balcony. And then sometimes I'll sit there as the sun comes up and I'll journal or pray or meditate or whatever. I just like to leave everybody else sleeping the night off, sleeping all the fun off that we had. And I just like to go out and kind of watch the waves roll in. And I often sit out there for an hour or so before anybody gets up. So one morning, several summers ago, I was sitting out there on the balcony, and suddenly this woman ran out from the townhouse next door, and she came out into the grass, and she was just wailing. She dropped to her knees in the grass, and she was saying, no, 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 no. I had no idea what had happened in her life, but I simply just could not leave another human being sitting there in that kind of distress by herself. So I quickly went down the stairs and I knelt beside her and I said something like this. I said, I have no idea what has happened in your life, but if it's okay with you, I'm just going to sit right here with you while you feel whatever it is you're feeling, while you cry this out. And she just kind of instinctively grabbed me and hugged me and wrapped her arms around me, and she just held me close, and I held her close as she just cried and cried and cried. And as she sobbed, she choked out enough words to let me know that her mother had just died, and she had just gotten word that morning. And she was devastated beyond words that she was not with her mother as she passed, and that instead she was at the beach. She felt guilty that she was not there, she was here. And I talked to her softly about her pain, and I assisted her in getting help to travel back home immediately. I just kind of jumped into that assistance to her. And I have no idea what we talked about, but I know that Spirit had me in that place at that time to help that grieving daughter. And my friends who were traveling with me, they couldn't believe that I had gone down and just kind of injected myself into this stranger's life and hugged her and wiped her tears and all of that. And they were shocked that I would like involve myself in someone else's private situation of pain and loss. But I knew that I couldn't hold the spiritual truth that all was well without joining her in that place of pain. I had to know for her that everything was unfolding perfectly for her and for her mother in that situation. And I don't remember if I prayed with her or not, but I certainly prayed within myself that all was well. I just felt like I was in the right place at the right time to step into action. I felt like I was on call to jump into an action of faith. And I just did it. And the second time that I want to tell you about that I can remember being called into faithful action was a morning in Houston when I was traveling for business. And when I would stay at hotels, I would always get up really early in the morning. There's a theme there. I was up early in the morning and I would work out in the gym because I tried to keep myself on East Coast time, and this was Central, so getting up at early was no big deal because my body was up anyway. But this particular morning, I was on the elliptical and I just clicked onto the television that was there. And I came across a video of an interview with a woman named Jill Bolte-Taylor, who had written the book, My Stroke of Insight. It was all about her experience, her personal experience of having a stroke. Well, Jill Bolte-Taylor is actually a brain scientist. So her perspective on her experience of having a stroke was just a fascinating interview. I actually recommend the book. It's a really great book. But I was glued to the TV during my workout. And she described as a stroke patient being able to feel the energy of the person coming into the room. She couldn't understand, her brain wasn't understanding what they were saying to her, but she could just hear their energy and feel that they were there to help her, even though she couldn't understand. And she talks in the book about being able to discern whose energy was safe for her and whose wasn't because she didn't understand language. Fascinating. But just a few hours later, so I get off the elliptical, I get shower, dressed, go to the office. A few hours later, I was sitting in this young executive's office, and a team member of hers just rushed into the office saying that Kimberly, who was her coworker, was lying on the floor having a seizure. And so Bobby, the young manager, she just froze in uncertainty, and she's like, go call 911. And I'm like, Bobby, you've got to go. You've got to go see this is your team member. You've got to go do help. But the manager was young, and she was very, very afraid. She's like, I don't know what to do. And I'm like, okay. So I jumped up, and I went, and I told the girl, take me to where Kimberly is. And I saw her on the ground, and I just dropped to the floor beside her. And I realized quickly she wasn't having a seizure. I knew what seizures were. She wasn't having a seizure. But her speech was really slurred, and her face was drooping, so I thought, she's having a stroke, something like that. And so I had just seen this interview with Jill Bolte-Taylor that morning. And so I had this awareness that Kimberly was experiencing my energy more than she was going to be able to understand what I was saying. And so I just sat with her calmly, and I stroked her hair, and I reassured her, and I told her, I said, we're going to get a hold of your emergency contact. She kept mumbling her son, she was very worried about her son. And so I just stayed with her until the EMTs could get her into the ambulance and get her taken away. And I just knew the entire time that her soul was connected to the one life, and that everything was going to be fine no matter what transpired in her situation. It was all as it should be. And I believe that my consciousness prepared me for that moment. I believe that I was guided to watch that certain channel that morning in the gym so that I could be prepared to use that knowledge that very day. I have enough faith to believe that I was on call to know the spiritual truth for a person in distress in both of these stories. You know, I never saw the grieving daughter again. I never saw that first person again. I did see Kimberly one more time. She heard that I was in the building several months later, a year later, I don't even know how long it was, and she came to find me and thank me for being with her. She didn't know who it was that had sat with her before she got into the ambulance, but when her coworkers told her who it was and she found out I was coming back, she wanted to see me and thank me, and we both just kind of shared this bond of gratitude that day. I've never seen her again. Kimberly, if you happen to be watching this, I love you and I would love to see you, but she's in Houston as far as I know. But anyway, faith is not something that we turn on and off. It isn't even something that we tune into. It's this knowing in our heart, beyond the reach of proof, that God is at the center of every situation, every circumstance, and every body and form. It's the very essence of who we are as this infinite self-knowingness of God as it incarnates us. It's who we are. We just have to let faith be what it is as us. Ernest Holmes argues, the founder of our philosophy, he argues that faith and fear are two sides of the same coin. Both are present as possibilities in every situation we find ourselves in. And when I know that there's only one power and that all is possible through that one power, I have flipped that coin from fear into faith. You know, when I can step into knowing that all is well, then I've flipped that coin of fear into faith. But in any situation we're in, we get to decide which coin, which side of the coin we want to look at. Are we going to look at the fear side, or are we going to look at the faith side? So when you ask a physician if they were afraid when they were asked to step forward into an unknown situation, they will tell you that they trust their training and their instincts and they act accordingly. They will say that once the situation has passed and they've done all that they can do, they will often feel that adrenaline rush that we call fear. They'll feel it later. And they can tremble and wonder how they were able to do whatever heroic thing they were able to do. And it's the same for us as metaphysicians. Sometimes when I'm working with a person in distress, I'm just trusting my training, I'm just trusting my spiritual instinct, and I speak and I act accordingly. And when both of those situations I described resolved themselves, I too was amazed at how I had whatever it took in that moment to be helpful. But I couldn't let my doubt, my self-doubt, or my modesty, or my fear keep me from serving in my faith. Ernest Holmes writes this: in order to have faith, we must have a conviction that all is well. In order to keep faith, We must allow nothing to enter our thought which will weaken this conviction. Faith is built up from belief, acceptance, and trust. Whenever anything enters our thought which destroys in any degree one of these attitudes, to that extent, faith is weakened. But it takes practice. It takes practice to keep doubt and fear from entering our thoughts and weakening our faith. It takes practice to keep flipping that coin to the faith side all the time. It takes discipline to step forward in strong faith in everything we do. And it starts with practicing our faith when things are going well. So let's talk about that for a second. You know, when we agree to look at life from a spiritual perspective, when we agree that there is only one life, that life is God's life, that life is my life now, when we agree that everything that happens is a part of the order of the divine, when we agree that we attract to us that which serves us, then we have the opportunity to practice knowing those truths on our good days. You know, we can hold our calm knowingness that God is at hand when we get upgraded to first class, or when we get the job, or when we feel our best and things are all working out. Then we can practice saying, okay, God is in this situation. God is in everything. And we're practicing our faith that this is a friendly universe that conspires for our good. You know, we write in our gratitude journals and we say our prayers of thanksgiving, and these practices are beneficial in growing those faith muscles. Because guess what? Life is full. Life is full of human experiences that can challenge us, and we can hit a crisis, can't we? Our spiritual practices can serve us even better when those moments arise. We can attract to us the support that we need during those challenges and crises if we're walking in faith. If we can maintain that calm knowingness that all is well, no matter what human condition we may be experiencing, we will understand that we can look beyond that stuff to a knowingness of the goodness of God. So how does this lesson apply to you? How does it apply to you? What in your life is calling you forward to take some action in faith? Is there a person in your life that needs your faith right now, perhaps? Is there a situation you're facing that calls you into a deeper faith to truly know that all is well? And your life's going to call you forward with ideas. You know, Lori didn't know I was going to use her as an example in my talk, but I was. And so I said, take Lori Ballard, for example. You know, she had these ideas. She had the idea of the masked movie night when 20-something of us enjoyed a movie here. She had this idea of this pandemic portrait project. She had that idea, and she could have talked herself out of it. She could have held herself back in self-doubt. What if no one comes for the movie? What if no one will let me take their picture? She could have hidden in all that. But she had faith that she had everything necessary within her to bring her true self to the table and to create with all of us. She trusted that all was well and that Spirit would be with her to the completion of both of these things, and that help would show up too. And look what happened. Look what happened. Your life is an example of your faith. You know, my former senior minister, Reverend David, asked me one time, if you were accused of being a person of faith or a metaphysician, would there be enough evidence to convict you? What would the evidence be? You know, to be convicted of being a person of faith, there would have to be evidence that actions were taken based on the knowing that all is well. There would have to be evidence that you turned to spiritual truth in the face of uncertainty. There would have to be evidence that you continuously flip that coin from fear to faith over and over again, no matter what the circumstances. Just remember this, we practice faith. It's not something we just have and forget about it. We know we are practicing faith when we respond to the world with love and compassion. Faith is an attitude of love and trust and compassion. Practice kindness with everyone you meet. Step forward into faith-based action whenever possible. Trust the God within you to guide your words and your actions and your choices, and allow yourself to be completely immersed in the divine. Faith is acting as if you know that you are the love of God available in the moment and showing up to be that love. trust yourself, and trust the entire universe. Have faith that you are created exactly as you are supposed to be. You're just the way you're supposed to be. And hopefully you'll say what our late, great Ruth Bader Ginsburg said. She said, I would like to be remembered as someone who used whatever talent she had to do her work to the very best of her ability. Unquote. She had faith in herself and faith in who she was. And I want to close with a quote from the Science of Mind textbook. If one will have faith in himself, faith in his fellow man, in the universe and in God, that faith will light the place in which he finds himself, and by the light of this faith, he will be able to see that all is good. And the light shed by this faith will light the way for others. We become conscious of darkness only when we are without faith, for faith is ever the light of our day and the light of our way, making that way clearly visible to us. So let's do our one-sentence affirmation together. I step forward in faith to take action, knowing I am divinely guided in all I do, and knowing that all is well.